I remember 7 years ago going on Instagram and seeing artists with hundreds of thousands of followers selling art prints. I immediately started fantasizing about how much money they must be making and wanted to try it out myself. And so I offered my award-winning artworks, whatever the F that means, for sale through prints. And lo and behold, I didn't sold anything. I tried a couple of times more and nothing changed. I was obviously devastated and didn't know what I did wrong. Now, several years later, I can tell you that it wasn't my fault. Several years later, I know many of these Instagram artists with hundreds of thousands of followers, and I know they are barely selling any art prints themselves. And so in this video, I will explain why selling art prints online is impossible and what you should do instead. So let's first talk about the reason no one is buying your art prints. The first obvious reason is that you are simply not promoting the fact that your art prints are available for sale. Way too often we have a series of artworks that people can buy and we make one social media post about it and then we leave it at that and never mention it again. Now, this is a common way of self-sabotaging. It's a common way of giving ourselves a way out. Because now we can always say that it wasn't our art that wasn't good enough, but that we just didn't promote it enough. This is a very risk-free way of sharing our work online, because if we would promote our work and nobody buys our work, it becomes a very painful experience. When you are promoting yourself and you are not selling anything, you start questioning whether or not you are a worthy artist. You start questioning whether or not you are good enough, and you start questioning whether or not you should just quit. And before you know it, those doubts take over and you actually pull the trigger, you quit and get a real job. And so not promoting your work enough is a problem, but that's not the main thing I want to talk about, because even if you would promote your art prints enough, you would still not sell any of them online. And the reason for that has something to do with the limitations that come with selling online itself. Here's what happens. Let's say you sell very cheap art prints of your art at a price point of $30 and you promote it so that people decide to buy your work. They press the buy button that puts the item in their cart. Now, at this moment, two things will happen. First of all, the person will see that the shipping costs are $10, which is a lot for an item that only costs $30. And the second thing that will happen is that they postpone their decision and sleep a night over it. In other words, when buying online, there is very little possibility to make an impulsive buy, because people can leave their item in their cart and postpone their decision at any time. Now you probably think by yourself, but hey Dries, this is not the case when I'm selling limited edition signature prints at higher price points. Because first of all, it's a limited edition, so there is some scarcity, and second, it's at a price point of $150, meaning that the $10 shipping suddenly becomes understandable. And in theory you are right, except for the fact that you are wrong because of two reasons. Number one, you are a beginner and some of your original art is priced at a couple of €100, meaning that for a small extra cost, they can buy an original and not a print. You might even have some drawings available at the same price points as those prints. And this makes your prints appear like a very bad choice. And the second reason is that you are a beginner artist, meaning that there is not that much demand for your art, and serious art collectors know that if you only have a couple of thousand followers, your art prints will not be sold out for years to come. And so the scarcity argument also doesn't work. And so should you sell your art prints if you have less than 50,000 followers and or if you sell original art for less than $1,000? The answer is no, you should not, because you are not going to make any sales. Now, does this mean that there is no way for you to sell art prints as a beginner artist? Well, not really, because there is actually one way to sell your art prints if you only have 100 followers or less. And that is to sell art prints in real life at some local event. I'm thinking about art fairs, conventions, exhibitions, things like that. I know people who have no social media following and sell more art prints on art fairs than some artists with 400,000 followers or more on Instagram. And so why is this? Well, when you are selling art prints in real life, you are talking to people. And if you have a good conversation with those people, they will oftentimes want to support you and feel the need to buy something. But something that will not cost them too much. Something that is not too big of a commitment, and then art prints become the ideal perfect fit. And on top of that, there is no way for them to start overthinking about their purchase because it all happens in real life, in real time. In other words, it's easy for those people to impulsively buy an art print. And so the natural follow-up question is how to sell your art locally. Well, when it comes to selling your art prints locally, the first and easiest way to look for is to use your friends and family. Organize a small exhibition just for your friends and family, and you'll be surprised of how many of them want to support you and want to buy some of your art prints. Every local exhibit I go to, or friends I know, I feel the need to buy something even when I don't like the art, because I know how hard it is to sell art and I don't want to be the guy that doesn't support them. The second way to utilize the local community is of course to participate in local art fairs and perhaps local conventions. Now, the benefit of this is that the connections you will make will likely be fairly local, meaning that you will be able to contact them for future events and oftentimes be able to invite them for an open studio day or something. This is, by the way, one of the mistakes I made myself. I focused too much on getting international exhibitions, exhibiting in cities like Berlin, London, Buenos Aires, Milan, Brussels, etc., etc. But the problem with the strategy of going for international exhibitions was that many of the connections I made during those events are located in areas very far from where I live, meaning it's very hard to keep in contact with them. And so local events might not sound sexy, but they are very functional and really your best option early on in your career. Now, besides the two things I just mentioned, there are a lot of other ways to sell your art locally as well. I made a whole video about it called 17 lucrative exhibition ideas, but you obviously don't have time to watch that. I understand. Let's go further. Now, if selling art prints online is not going to work and you don't want to sell at local events because that's not sexy enough, a natural question that follows is what to do instead. Should you sell art on products instead? Should you focus on selling art online, or should you do something entirely different altogether? Well, the first thing I mentioned there, selling art on products in a print-on-demand fashion, is definitely an option. There are a lot of people searching for particular types of products like sweaters and t-shirts, and if you are an illustrator that can make catchy designs that are thought-provoking, fresh, funny, smart, and your designs not only serve an already existing demand, but can also increase the chances for impulsive buying moments within your customers. If you design a cool Christmas sweater like this one, for example, I'm sure people would impulsively buy it right before the holidays. And besides those types of illustrators, there also seems to be a place for painters who are not afraid to make very superficial type of commercial works about cliché topics and sell them on Etsy or other marketplaces for cheap. What type of topics are we talking about? Well, I'm thinking about, for example, cats, dogs, birds, whales, orcas, seascapes with warm colors contrasting the blue oceans, etc., etc. There will always be someone who wants to buy a coaster with a cute little cat on because they love cats. But if you are a fine artist who is more traditional, you are not going to do well trying to sell art on products. And so for those types of artists, I would focus on selling original art and step away from the idea of selling art prints altogether. And if you dream of building a passive income stream selling art prints, then you should understand that it's going to take a very long time before you can do that. Unlike with the print-on-demand strategy, selling fine art prints is not about building a portfolio of art prints, but it's about building a market for art prints. And this is a very strange concept if you compare it to other industries. In most industries, you build a product that already has an existing demand around it. And then you bring that product to market in a new and interesting way, trying to capture a portion of that market. When it comes to contemporary art, on the other hand, there is no existing demand for your work because nobody knows you. And let's face it, we are simply not as amazing as we think we are. And so what you should do instead is build a market first before you build your product. First, you generate the demand for your product, and then once the demand exists, you offer the product. This is why selling art is so much harder than selling ice cream. There is simply no such thing as a hot summer day where people suddenly crave ice cream. When it comes to art, you have to create that hot summer day yourself. Now you might be asking yourself, how can I build a hot summer day for my art? And luckily for you, there are many options out there. Social media, galleries, museums, you name it. Whatever you choose, I probably have some videos about it for free on my channel. That said, get the hell out of here.